How you doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and as you can see, we're back at it, breaking down the latest in Mets land. And in this Big Mets update segment, later in the evening here, February 22nd, 2025, just a couple hours after Juan Soto did the thing and hit his first home run and his first spring at-bat for the New York Mets. And we had a live show breaking that all down, along with Clay Holmes' masterful 3 innings of work and his 6-2 victory over the Astros earlier today. So check that out whenever you get a chance after watching this show, because in this one, we have to get into all the latest on Vladdy Guerrero Jr. We know the Mets have been involved in his market, and we know that next offseason, the Mets will be one of the top suitors for Vladdy. Well, Vladdy did an exclusive interview that we're going to break down, highlighting not only potentially the Mets' chances, but where things stand with the New York Yankees on his viewpoint, as he has famously been a Yankee hater in the public eye. Has that changed, if at all, and what are his exact reasons for being against the Yankees? Why has everything now set up for not only the Mets, but the Red Sox and want some other teams to find themselves in a great position to land Vladdy over the Yankees next offseason if he is not traded by the deadline? Let me see your reactions to all in the comments down below, everybody. Thank you so much for smashing that like and subscribe button, and shout out to our amazing sponsor that many of you guys know well here at BetUS, which has you covered with all your sports betting needs. Simply head over to betus.com.pa today and use Wardy's promo code YouTube150. That way YouTube will get a 150% bonus on your first deposit, 125 on your second and your third for whatever you want to bet on. And folks, I'm taking Henry Cejudo as the money line underdog at plus 200 over Yadon San. Yes, you heard that correctly. A UFC matchup in bantamweight, and I love my UFC fight nights the same way I love my MLB picks, whether it's for the Mets or separate from my bias picks. NHL, NFL, NBA, you name it. And I'm not a sports betting expert, just a diehard fan that loves to place daily bets here at BetUS. So if you guys want to tail this bet here before Cejudo has his fight just over the next hour or so at the time of recording this one, good luck to everyone that tails this. Again, not an expert, and I do think Cejudo as the underdog, it's finally time for him to win this one, since coming back, for those that don't know, was a champ in bantamweight, then retired for a couple years, came back, and has yet to really get himself in a groove now as a veteran, as a UFC fighter. He's trying to do that tonight against a guy that's pretty much a decade younger than him. We'll see if he'll get a chance to do exactly that and actually maximize said opportunity. But now, guys, let's get into this one, and let's get into the Vladdy Guerrero Jr. news, because this all stems from an article that came out earlier today, literally over the past hour or two, from Jon Heyman of the New York Post. If you guys check out this article, if you haven't, I will have it linked down below in the description for you guys. It goes on to break down an exclusive interview that Jon Heyman had one-on-one with Vladdy Guerrero Jr. And yes, I think this absolutely, to a degree, goes in hand with the rumblings that just transpired over the past 48 hours. In case you guys missed it, Vladdy, who obviously denied the Toronto Blue Jays on an extension. We broke down a video just a couple days ago on it, on how it sets up the Mets well next offseason in general, but how they were nowhere close in their extension talks leading up to his deadline, which was the start of spring training. And fast forward a couple days later, up until this past couple days now, we see that the Yankees fan page, a Yankees fan page on Instagram, went out of their way to post Vladdy and Yankees gear and say, could this be possible? Guerrero Jr.'s actual Instagram account, so he himself goes out of his way to like said post. This puts a lot of Yankees fans in a frenzy, and some people were commenting right away, well, the Photoshop doesn't even make sense to have Vladdy in a Yanks outfit when he would have to shave his beard. Well, a day later, we find out that the Yankees have changed their policy. They're now allowing freshly groomed beards. So I'm not exactly sure how much that'll go in dictation for Vladdy and his decision, but that ultimately went at least somewhat in hand with Jon Heyman getting this interview now done, because not only have the Mets been connected to Vladdy, but there's a lot of belief that the Yankees are going to go all in on Vladdy Guerrero Jr. next offseason, as they currently don't have a long-term first base option. That's why they're settling with Paul Goldschmidt after parting ways with Anthony Rizzo this past offseason. So Vladdy goes on to break down in said article why he has been against the Yankees throughout his career. It also goes on to highlight how teams like the Mets and the Red Sox are still in better position over the Yankees, and it goes directly in hand with why he has a problem with the Yanks in the first place, why this necessarily isn't the case going forward. But I think it goes without saying the Yankees are not in the greatest position to land Vladdy, other than the hundreds of millions of dollars that Steinbrenner can present to Vladdy, his agent, and his entire team next offseason. But in said article from Jon Heyman, it goes on to note how he's a very personable guy, Vladdy. He really cares about his family, and he really cares about Toronto. There's a great reality where if they do meet him at least close to what he's looking for next offseason, that he could still return to the Toronto Blue Jays. He loves it there, and he would love to continue his career there, but he knows that at the end of the day, and he said it himself, and I quote, "It's a business at the end of the day." So anything can happen here. And when we look at where this disgruntlement came in hand between the Yankees and Vladdy, this goes back a number of years where we heard on record from Vladdy on a Spanish podcast saying how even in death, he would never play for the New York Yankees. He hates them. He despises them. He loves playing in the Bronx as the villain against the Yankees, and that being that. And the reason being is, as we go back right around 20 years ago or so, Vladdy Guerrero Sr., back when he had this much of an opportunity to land with the New York Yankees before they opt with a relative of Doc Gooden, that being a Mr. Gary Sheffield. So Vladdy, after initially thinking that he was going to be a New York Yankee, comes to find out that they opt for Gary Sheffield, and because of that reason, Vladdy Sr. and Jr. are not going to be a New York Yankee. So that initially is what bothered little Vladdy, who was just a couple years old at the time of this transpiring, come to find out that he had a terrible experience directly in hand with Yankee security. And this is what I really want to emphasize, because this has been a commonality that we have now heard from multiple people. At least it's either been hearsay or now it's been reported through interview that we have Vladdy saying himself, and I quote, "When I was a child with my dad, Vladdy Sr., like all players' kids did, I was in front of the dugout, and somebody from the Yankees told my dad that you got to take your kid inside. You can't be on the field." Guerrero told the Post, "I felt bad, and it stood with me since then." So that right there was not a positive experience for Vladdy Jr. to experience, just because he was on the field with his dad like any other player-son tandem was doing at the time. So Vladdy, we know when it comes to the Yankees, they have been unbelievably stubborn over the years on their policy. And this is not just something that goes in hand with Vladdy's treatment as a kid, but fast forward to Juan Soto and the Mets today. And we know that Vladdy had plenty to say on the Juan Soto front in his contract that we're going to deep dive here in a second. But let's also not forget that one of the things that was leaked out through the media throughout the process of the Mets and landing Soto over the Yankees was that Juan Soto, while yes, he's chasing the biggest bag, he also really cared about the Mets' hospitality aspect of Alex and Steve Cohen really unraveling the red carpet for not only Juan, but his entire family and giving them the best treatment possible. Last year, not long into Juan Soto's Yankee tenure, a one-and-done thankful Yankee tenure, right? We come to find out that Soto's family was mistreated by security that were acting like they had bigger cojones than they wish they did there in a normal interaction, just on the side before a game started. And that alone bothered Soto quite a bit. And that was further amplified in the media as we found out that Soto signed with the Mets. And this was not the factor, but a factor that kind of bothered Soto the wrong way. Now we come to find out, okay, Steinbrenner, Cashman, they're taking away the multi-decade-long rule of facial hair, something that's been in place that George Steinbrenner put in place right around 1976, 1977 area, and it hasn't been a thing since. No one's had facial hair outside of a mustache. That's pretty much been it. Well, not only did Devin Williams, the new closer for the Yankees, explain his current problem with having to shave his beard, which he has since done so for the Yankees. Well, after talking to multiple current and former players, the Yankees came to the conclusion that we need to make a change here, and it does go in hand with them missing out on player pursuits because of the players being bothered by having to change their look. That is how significant it is. Common knowledge to the average baseball fan that puts two and two together and says, wow, if a guy wants personality, if a guy doesn't want to be a conformist and look like he's about to enlist in the Army, then by all means, he doesn't want to be a New York Yankee. If he wants to be a New York Yankee, he wants to be that literal conformist Army type way, where you go about the Yankee way and everyone is essentially the same. Well, the fact that they're finally going away from that is telling that this will go in hand, at least to a certain degree, with the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. pursuit. They're going to do everything in their power to try to bring Vladdy in, but the fact alone that this is yet another connection, going back to when Vladdy was a kid, that he sat on to this point, that he was so mistreated by the Yankee organization, I think tells you all you need to know. It really does, because as we fast forward now to present day, Vladdy has made it known that yes, he's willing and he will sit down with any and every team. That's what his dad told him to do, and he was absolutely going to abide by that and do that. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to lead to a deal, but he is going to listen from the Yankees as well as every team in Major League Baseball. That's why he's available for every team in Major League Baseball. And when we get on the topic of Juan Soto in particular and how he felt about out of that contract, I think that too is important because Juan Soto and Vladdy Guerrero Jr. have a tremendous connection. Not only are they fellow Dominican players, but these are guys I've not only had great connections during the home run derbies in years past, but I've also, if I'm not mistaken, I've worked out to a degree in the off seasons together. I know they have a relationship. I just can't say to what degree. I just know it's a positive one. And two Dominican players who have played alongside each other in the World Baseball Classic just a year and a half, 2 years ago now, would be able to rekindle that relationship and then some by landing with the Mets here potentially on a long-term deal. And I know that there are Mets fans out there that do not believe that a guy like Vladdy Guerrero Jr. is going to come here because A, the Mets don't want to invest in a long-term contract again after already doing it to multiple players. And I understand that, but I also understand the Mets have a lot coming off the books over the next couple of years. So I think that's a silly notion that the Mets won't land a guy like Vladdy because of the long-term aspect. One, he'll only be 26 in the offseason. And no, ignore the age down there. It's not 28. He's 25 right now. He'll be 26 when he's a free agent next offseason. That was an error on my end from months ago when I initially made this graphic. And he's making just under $30 million this upcoming season for the Toronto Blue Jays. And hopefully, as a Mets fan, I could say this, his final year in Toronto. But there's a contingent of Mets fans, I believe, that A, David Stearns and Steve Cohen have been vocal on saying how it's easier said than done to swing multiple long-term contracts. That's true. It doesn't mean that Vladdy's a lot to come here. But the Mets have already pursued Vladdy Guerrero Jr. They've already been involved in his trade market. They've already been involved in his market in general. And we know that they're going to be going after him next offseason plenty because Pete Alonso has that opt-out. He will be opting out. Even if Alonso has a down year, the likelihood of him opting into that deal is slim to none. He's still going to be looking for a multi-year deal elsewhere. And whether that is with the Mets, I shouldn't say elsewhere, whether that's with the Mets or elsewhere, that is yet to be seen. But there's also a role where the Mets could essentially bring in both Vladdy and Alonso. Alonso more on the shorter term end again, Vladdy more on the long term end. One DHs, one goes first base / third base, and Vladdy, even though I'm perfectly fine keeping Vladdy at first, if you don't want to hinder at all what Vientos is developing at the hot corner. So those are all the cons, and I understand the fans that have a level of pessimism and pursuing Vladdy because why do you want to ink multiple guys in long-term deals? But here's the reason why. And here's exactly as to why the Mets are set up, and this goes in hand with how he feels about Soto's contract, right? The Mets only have 3 long-term deals right now. They have Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, and Brandon Nimmo, right? That's the only thing they have. Edwin Diaz, obviously, with his opt-out, but he won't be opting out. We know that. More than likely, at least. The Mets don't really have much long-term commitment. They don't. So this belief that, the Mets are going to be stubborn in their spending this next couple off seasons, I think it's far from it. Yes, they want to continue to develop in-house, become more the Dodgers where they're reliant on their in-house options and then can trade them away when is deemed best fit. But I think the Mets are also very cognizant that Vladdy Guerrero Jr. fits the shorter and long-term mold the way that Juan Soto did as well. And now, as we refer to the Juan Soto contract comments, Vladdy Guerrero Jr. says the following, and I quote, "It was an excellent deal for him," Vladdy said. "He's been performing every single year, especially his last year, his free agent year, a perfect year for him. Guerrero gets how important 2025 is for him, so he's working hard to improve his stellar 2024 campaign that you guys can see from the numbers down below. I mean, literally, just 30 home run, 100 RBI, usual campaign season for Vladdy, who's leaps and bounds a better overall quality hitter than what Pete Alonso has been in their respective careers. Alonso is heavily reliant on his power, where Vladdy can give you multiple 25 home run seasons, but still be so above league average on the proficiency aspect, like 65% above league average he was this past year. Just for context, Alonso has never been that high above league average as a hitter throughout his career. Even going back to his 2019 50-plus home run season, he was not that good. The contact ability, the on-base ability, roughly 400, over 500 slug this past year, a tremendous OPS, a tremendous year for Vladdy Guerrero Jr., and a guy who will be looking for a bag, absolutely, but he references a guy like Soto because Juan Soto goes in hand with why Vladdy's, without question, hitting the free agent market. Any guy that's in their peak primes of 24, 25, 26, 27 is not going to sign an extension with their team unless their team gives them an unbelievably lucrative extension, or two, the reality is that Vladdy's going to hit the market, and he's probably going to ink a deal at 10 to 15 years with opt-outs after probably 5 years, like Juan Soto's deal, so very eerily similar in structure, but the AAV is what's different. Juan Soto's making 51 mil AAV right now, barring changes. Vladdy Guerrero Jr. should not be making more, honestly, than 30 mil AAV. That's probably the range he should be in, but he'll be pushing for that 40 mil AV. And the reason why he will is because Alex Bregman's getting 40 mil AV on at least 3 years. That alone is going to be enough for Vladdy to up the ante and say, hey, I should be in that market as well. I'm younger, I have more upside right now, and I have more controllability on a long-term deal, even with opt-out. So that's where the Mets and the Red Sox, as John Heyman alludes, are still in a proper and a better position than the Yankees, because even with Vladdy having the doors open for Cashman to come in and say, hey, we'd like to have a sit down with you. We would love to break down the numbers. We can make you the highest and most expensive first baseman in Major League Baseball history. The problem is, so can the Mets, so can the Blue Jays should they wish, so can the Red Sox should they wish, and we all know there's been a lot of Red Sox connection there, so it wouldn't shock me if Vladdy landed there in the end. Pardon me, among some other teams. Needless to say, Vladdy Guerrero Jr. is not only hitting the free agent market, but he will be a $500 million man. And it's funny that I've had interactions with fans on social media that say, you're crazy for suggesting such a thing. I don't want Vladdy to get $500 million. I'm just telling you it's a reality. The same way that we all thought that Shohei Ohtani wasn't even going to sniff, $600 million, yet he gets, $700 million. Then we see Juan Soto sniffing, what, $600 million? No, try $805 million in total worth of said contract. So it goes without saying that how Vladdy is going to be hitting this upcoming free agent market is directly handled with a team like the Mets, who focus on the short and long-term bill. And the Mets are going to be shelling out a lot of these high AV contracts over long-term deals. They're going to be doing it for guys that are in the peak prime, and that, hey, if we invest in you for the next decade, we know that we can get a decade's worth of 25 to 30 home run, 100 RBI consistent campaigns, while hopefully hitting anywhere from 30% above league average to 60 to 70 plus, the way that Vladdy was this past year. Is it a guarantee to happen? No, but just like we beat the Juan Soto drum all year long last year, is the same way that we will be beating the Vladdy Guerrero Jr. drum all year this year. With Alonso uncertainty, obviously I'm wishing him the best, and I hope Alonso's here long term, which means that he's thrived well, but Vladdy is the better overall player. He has been, he will continue to be more than likely, and he's 3.5 years younger at least right now. So when you look at all the factors that go in hand with what makes sense for the Mets to have long-term investment, Vladdy Guerrero Jr. still fits the bill, with understanding the cons that, yes, it does make more sense, you could argue, to have more controllability at first base and DH, not have as much a long-term commitment there for guys that we know we could still get power implementation there year after year, maybe just not as quality of a hitter in Vladdy. Do the Mets want to separate the two because of how drastic the dollars will be in a guy in Guerrero who's going to be drastically overpaid, getting a $500+ million contract? The Mets maybe want to invest more elsewhere in a guy like Kyle Tucker, who will also be available in the free agent market next year, or does he make less sense given the Mets outfield configuration right now? Mets fans, I'll leave you to debate about that in the comments down below. But that is going to wrap up our Vladdy Guerrero Jr. Big Mets update discussion, and I really want to hear from you guys. How optimistic or pessimistic are you on the Mets' pursuit of Vladdy over the Yankees, over the Red Sox, over the Jays, over other teams right now, especially in the big market space, as Vladdy is without question the biggest name available next free agent market for a position player at first base especially, and at his age, even with Alonso there. It is Vladdy's market to dominate, and I look forward to covering it all year long, while Pete Alonso, I'm sure, is going to dominate for the Mets here in 2025. Can't complain right now as a Mets fan. Thank you guys again for watching. Let me know your continued thoughts down below, and be on the lookout for consistent post-game coverage, spring training, and regular and playoff lawn here on the platform, as well as all the other individual videos we have out, like the ones we're doing right here, right now. Thank you guys again. Let's go Mets. Peace out.